Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.
And welcome to Behind the Mirror of Music. My name is Dannii Cohen. This week's guest is Daniel Friedman. Daniel Friedman was a performer in the original 1998 USA tour of Les Misérables as Thernadier and in various other roles, as well as in the second, third, and Singapore tour. He also starred in many other shows, including the Cats' 10th anniversary tour. Then, after many years in the business, he decided to retrain as a cantor. As the Jewish community celebrates Rosh Hashanah this week, Daniel leads us on a journey connecting the story of Jean Valjean to this high holiday. I hope that you'll enjoy the show. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, how are you, Danny? It's good to finally meet you.
Great, absolutely. Happy Rosh Hashanah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's one of my favorite times of the year.
Are you going to do anything special?
Well, good question. I mean, I don't know if yeah, I'll be leading services for Rosh Hashanah and starting, with Slichot, Rosh Hashanah. We'll do Yom Kippur and Sukkot, Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeret, so that's pretty much what I do these days. So we're in preparation with my choir and preparation with my musical director and the rabbi. So we're deep in preparations for the high holidays.
That's wonderful. Your life has always been about music and everything. How did you fall in love with music?
That's a really good question, because it has to do with also my involvement with my synagogue life. So I grew up here in Southern California in the United States, and I was raised in the San Fernando Valley, and there was a synagogue that I went to, Adat Ariel, and the rabbi there was a very musical rabbi. It was a young, energetic rabbi named Moshe Rothblum. And Moshe Rothblum, maybe some of your listeners know, or you may know, of a very familiar Kabbalat Shabbat tune for the Veshamru. And it goes, Veshamru v'nei Yisrael et. This has become like a Mi Sinai tune. And so it just kind of indicates that he was very, very prolific in writing music, but he also had a love for theater. And so his parents were he had Yiddish theater in his background. So every spring, the synagogue would encourage him to produce a musical, contemporary musical, with using the students and the kids that were in the youth department. And I loved to sing. And so when I was 16 years old, my cantor also engaged me in learning how to daven and pray. And so I learned how to be like a Chazan Sheni, and I was very young. And then I led services, and I was very involved in that aspect. But I also liked theater, so I would do the rabbi's plays. And my whole family was musical, and so we would do these musicals every year, like the Fantastics, Fiddler on the Roof, Oliver. And I got the bug. I got the theater bug at the same time as being introduced to Jewish life. So we were a rather observant Jewish family. And yet I really, really wanted to explore theater. And that's how I got both bugs kind of at the same time, and grew up in a very culturally observant Jewish family, spiritually observant. My mother's very, very involved, and my father was very involved. And yet they also loved the theater. So I really had exposure to both, but it was through my synagogue involvement.
How did you start your path to theater? Did you have
Right. So my path through theater came from the synagogue, and then I would also do theater in my high school, And so I really loved being involved in theater. And I wanted to move to New York City upon graduating and go do theater with some good friends of mine. And my parents said, no, as good Jewish parents are, you're going to go to college. And so I went to college. I went to UCLA as a theater major. And then after I graduated, I mean, at every level, I was encouraged, and I kept working and doing shows and being encouraged to keep singing and keep acting. And, I kept getting cast in things. And so I think that's like the most inspiring thing for a young actor, is that you see that you can actually do this. And then upon graduating from college, I auditioned for my big professional show. I'd been working professionally already a little bit, but that was my first big audition, was for Les Mis. And I could sing, and I could act a little bit. And I got cast in the first national tour of Les Mis out of college. And that's really what really launched my professional career. I had done a lot of regional theater prior to that. I'd done some dinner theater. While I was in school, I'd leave and go back and forth and finish my degree. And so I was dabbling in it, knew I could do it, but I didn't know at what level. I didn't know, what level I could attain. And so that was really kind of a moment when I felt like, okay, I can really do this. I can really, all this training and everything's really coming to fruition. And I knew that I wasn't, I knew there were, thousands and thousands of people that really would love to do theater at the highest level. And I knew really, really talented people that didn't work a lot, but they were incredibly talented. So I had this amazing appreciation for where I was and what I could do. And that's kind of got me started, so to speak. Sorry about that. That got me started, so to speak, in the theater. And I ran that show for 2.5 years. And then I moved to New York with that kind of in my pocket as a calling card, because I knew a lot of people that I had met from working in that show, and I knew a lot of the producers and we had met some casting directors. So there's a lot of people that we met, and that really kind of launched me getting into New York, and then working in New York and doing the whole pounding the pavement in New York City and living the actor's life. That's what I did for the next pretty much. Was in 1991. I moved to New York, 92. And from then on, from 92 till about 2003, I had a foothold in New York City.
You stayed in Les Misérables and many productions of Les Misérables for a long time.
Correct. So I was very fortunate to do the first national. And then I was also asked to do the third national tour. And that led to doing being the Singapore company as well. I started in Les Mis at what's called a swing, which is basically the person that sits backstage. And on a tour in particular, it's all self-contained. So if anybody gets sick or they get hurt or they take a show off, then the swings would come in and fill in for that particular role. It was all the ensemble parts. So I think were about 18 roles that we had to learn. There were 2 men and 2 women. And, sometimes we'd have multiple people out. We'd have to just juggle around, and sickness would go through the cast. And so it was rather exciting at times. But I really cut my teeth, and I kind of look at it as graduate school, as I was very young. I was one of the youngest guys in the cast at the time, and, right out of college. And so I was just so grateful to be doing anything. And then I came back and did the third national tour. And that's when I had a onstage, recurring part as Claxou. And I understudied Thernadier, the master of the house. And so I would go on for vacations, and I'd go on if he was out. And there were a number of us 2 of us, I think, that were covers at the time. So that was even more fun to be on every night to be doing the show. And the same thing held for the Singapore company. We held the same part when we went to Singapore, and just was young and got to travel, and it was just a fantastic time to be in. You know, probably I consider one of the greatest, if not the greatest, musicals of all time. You know, now of course there's Hamilton, and you know you can make an argument that there's a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals are some of the greatest, and there's others, but you know, it was the Hamilton of its time. You know, Les Mis was revolutionary and innovative in its production and its staging and its writing. Everything was just beyond anything anybody ever seen. So
It's a really strong story that I think will always speak to people. Every person can be drawn to, I think, one of the characters at least.
yeah, that's a really great point. You know, I made so just to kind of dovetail it with my Jewish journey too. I maintained my Jewish identity in the cast. You know, I every city that we went to, I always sought out a synagogue that I could go to services on Saturday morning, and then I could because I could go, and then I could go do my show that night. So I really enjoyed being, you know, getting to know every place we went to the community, the Jewish community, you know, in all the cities that we were able to travel in. And I met some amazing people. And I just, it was the grounding force for me. And it also kind of kept me, you know, it kept me grounded, you know, to be able to connect to, because wherever I went, the prayers were the same. And I went to conservative synagogues everywhere I went. So it was always something very familiar to me. It was, and it's like putting on my favorite pair of jeans, you know, it just fits perfectly and you feel very comfortable. Um, and I would, so it was really important for me to be doing that, you know, and then, and all the people certainly in the shows that we met were fantastic as well.
Did you perform on Fridays?
So you have 8 shows a week. You have Mondays off, and you're doing shows on Friday. Sometimes there might be a Saturday matinee. There might be a Sunday matinee, but you're definitely doing Friday night shows. And so it was always break into doing doing being able to observe Shabbat. Uh, I I continued doing this for many years, and I was able to keep working and did you know, the 10th anniversary tour of Cats, and did a lot of national tours. I did a little show called Forever Plaid in New York City and ran that for a year or so in New York, and then went back out on the road, and then you know, I did regional theater. So working out of New York, I was able to really have a working career and make, as my grandmother says, I made a living, you know. It was nice to be able to make a living as an actor. And then I found myself, if you want to kind of transition into what I do now, so I always kind of looked at, you have to think, I always looked, because where I began in theater in my synagogue, I always kind of viewed being an actor and singing as a gift that was given to me by God, you know, and I have to just be the steward of that gift and try to do as much as I can with it, because it wasn't mine. It was, I didn't own it, you know, and I could mess it up. I mean, you could absolutely mess it up if you don't take responsibility for that kind of stuff. And then I looked at doing shows as kind of also a spiritual pursuit, and acting also as being spiritual. To be as truthful as you can as an actor is really bearing your soul, you know, and digging deep into who you are. If you want to be effective, I think. I think the most effective actors that I love just take me on a journey that I didn't even expect to go on, you know? And when
Yes.
you go on, yeah, and then especially with really good shows, they also take you on a journey. You laugh, you cry, you empathize with these characters, and you feel their journey, you know? So you kind of mentioned like the characters that we all identify with. There's one line that it just always sticks with me out from Les Mis in particular, which is, to love another person is to see the face of God.
Yes.
And it's one of the most beautiful lines ever written. And it's so simple. And it always was so poignant for me that and it translates into Judaism as B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. So every human being is created in the image of God. And so to love another person is to love God, is to love that, the pure essence of who that person is. Now, and that's kind of the actor that I was and am, if I ever am acting again, but was to dig that deep into these characters and to dig that deep into who I was as an actor and then have it reflected through the characters on the stage. And so I looked at these journeys, and Les Mis is just one of those incredible stories, that really every one of the characters has an incredible arc. You know, Eponine's arc is fantastic. Fantine's arc is fantastic. Even Marius and Cosette, their journey is fantastic. And of course, Jean Valjean, you know,
Yes.
the ultimate redemptive character of tshuva in life, right? So we're going into Rosh Hashanah. And here's this, we're talking, you know, you talk about redemption, you talk about making tshuva and having opportunities to be our best version of ourselves. You know, Valjean is an amazing character study for humanity. Um, so, you know, there's a huge parallel right there. Um, and most characters have redemptive moments. So in a good show, they have some sort of transformation. I think that's what we see is this moment of transformation, and we're into a glimpse of their life. So, you know, as we enter into the high holidays, it's a powerful kind of metaphor and a powerful reminder that we should be mindful of what we want to transform in our lives, how we want to become better people, how we want to change maybe a little bit. And we can be inspired by the arts, you know, in music and theater, you know, in art itself, you know, can be inspiring tools to move us, you know, through these high holidays too.
So how did you transition from being a musical theater artist to becoming a cantor?
So if I were to continue on with like the journey and how I even transformed, you know, I found myself in Las Vegas, you know, the most sin city of any city, doing Forever Plaid. Again, I was asked to do Forever Plaid. Once you're in the kind of companies, you know these parts, you know, and then the producers, if if you're so fortunate, they'll ask you to go do a company here and a company there, and you know, if you're available and you want to do it, you can work things out. And so I found myself in Las Vegas because it was close to where I lived in Los Angeles. And I wasn't drinking. I didn't drink. I didn't gamble. And I was doing 10 shows a week. And so I decided that I would take classes and to learn about Jewish mysticism at that time. And so during the day, I started studying Jewish mysticism with incredible teachers and rabbis. And through that process of rediscovering my Judaism, as to the why we do things and not just the how we do them, it lit a spark in me that this is more what I wanted to do with my life. And I started trying. Was starting to try on Judaism, and so, you know, I started keeping kosher, seeing how it felt, you know, and it felt, and because I understood that the holiness of food and my relationship with food changed, you know. I started wearing a kippah. I tried wearing a kippah. What would that feel like if I wore it on a regular basis? How would I feel walking around a casino, going into work, you know, knowing that that's a symbolic, you know, symbol of God's presence overlooking you in the life and the mitzvot. So I'm always constantly aware of the mitzvot. I started going to morning minyan and putting on tefillin every single day, getting married to God on a daily basis. I understood what the meaning of the tefillin was, and it really started inspiring me on a daily basis. I started observing the chagim more and understanding them from a spiritual, mystical, kabbalistic point of view. And ultimately, the last thing that I couldn't do was observe Shabbat. And I was fortunate enough when I was in Las Vegas, I started attending a synagogue on a regular basis, a conservative synagogue. So they got to know who I was. And as I mentioned earlier, I grew up very involved in my Jewish synagogue. I went to Jewish camps, so I knew a lot of davening already. It was in there somewhere. And this kind of sparked a rediscovery of my Jewish identity. And they, just by fortune, I want to say it's, God kind of working his mysterical mystery way in my life. There was an opportunity at a synagogue where they had a cantor, and for whatever reasons that wasn't working out, and there was an opening, and it was a beautiful, wonderful place that I was already involved in. And the leadership, I went and talked to the rabbi, and I said, I can help out. I used to do this. I can do it. And I rediscovered that I knew a lot more than I thought I knew. And they were willing to help me learn more. And so, unfortunately, I just signed a new 6-month contract to do the show for 6 more months. But they said, hey, come and for, work during the day here. And at night, you can go do your show. You can do that other thing. And so I started doing both for about 6 months. And again, I could do services every day. I could lead services. I could learn to read Torah. I learned Torah. I could teach B'nai Mitzvah. I could do everything that a chazan or a cantor does. And I didn't have actually the smicha yet, right? So I started learning, and I came back to Los Angeles to study with one of my mentors here, who by fate, I knew him as my voice teacher when I was in college, because he was a great voice teacher, and he happened to be a cantor. But I never wanted to be a cantor, but he happened to be one of the best voice teachers in Los Angeles. And so I went through him and to him for that path. And he was also connected to my university through his accompanist. So it just, you never know how the universe comes together. So I went back to him, but not as a voice teacher, but as a cantorial mentor, because he was one of the greatest chazans, and is to this day. His name's Nathan Lamb, and he is one of the greatest cantors, I think, in the world, and world renowned. And he had started a school, so again, it was fortunate to teach people like me who were maybe second career or doing this. It needed more of a part-time kind of a program, and it was just perfect timing. And so after that 6 months, they offered me a full-time contract, and I was ready. I was ready. I was 36 years old. I was rather young. My career was doing just fine in theater, and I was waiting and working hard for that really amazing role to come. And who knew if I would ever be a star, but I knew that I loved acting and I loved being in it. But the process had kind of given way to doing to the work, if you know what I mean by that. I don't know if I can maybe elucidate a little bit more. When you're working and doing a show, there's a certain process that you go through to be authentic and in the moment, every single moment of that show. Because 10 shows a week, each show should be as if it's the first time you've ever done that show. So it stays as fresh and real as possible. But there's a lot of work that goes into just doing that. And what I think I really, really missed and loved was the creative process of putting something together, creating something from new, from the freshness. And the stories were great. And I loved telling the stories because that was the joy of taking an audience on a journey. But it started losing its luster of just doing the show and not having process. So as a cantor, I saw that I was really telling stories, real stories in real people's lives, being part of their process of the journey in their life, not just playing at it on the stage. And it became really profound for me to be a part of that. And what was I going to do with the rest of my life? And how was I going to, again, go back to using these gifts that were given to me to best help the world? How could I make the world a better place? I thought theater was that venue and that avenue, and it was, and it is. And I still think theater is one of the most incredible creative venues to help heal the world, from great entertainment when it's done right is transformative and can be transformative. But now being part of Real Stories and having the ability to kind of develop this other craft, utilizing vocal skills, storytelling. Rabbis are constantly telling stories,
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That it became really profound for me. And I was at that place in my life where I was trying Judaism on, and the last thing that I couldn't do was observe Shabbat. And that opportunity came, and I was ready. It was like a confluence of events to make that transition. And I kind of had like an existential epiphany that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I felt called to it.
Is there any role you would have wanted before in the past? A dream role?
That is really fantastic. Yes. I think even within Les Mis, even within Les Mis, I'm a like a high tenor, and but I always did comedy because I always explored that. My body type might have been more, but I never knew. But I always wanted to be Valjean.
Yes.
And I still to this day, I think maybe I'm more, I could maybe pull it off, but I always reach for parts that, because I always felt that part of working as an actor is knowing who you are, So I always thought that, and I always considered myself, but also one of the things about it, the ego of an actor is we think I could do anything, I could learn how to do any role. You give me any role, anything, I can do it, but it's convincing, convincing casting directors or directors that you can try something. And I think that's what, we see that a lot in film and television theater, where people try to stretch and it's just a near miss, we go, oh, I don't really believe them, and I love that they take the risk of trying to stretch as opposed to staying safe in roles that people know them as. So like, I wanted to be Chris in Miss Saigon, that was my era. I'd love to be Hamilton in Hamilton, I think, but I'm a little older now. So I think those were the dream roles that I wanted back then. And I thought maybe I have to grow myself into them. I think also, God, who wouldn't want to play Hamlet? I mean, I never really dove into my Shakespeare chops. I certainly had to study it in college, and I had to do it in college. But I never really explored the classic literature out there, the classic plays that were out there. That I think there are some really juicy roles that I would love to have, play. But in the musical theater world, those were roles that I just, I even tell my wife, I know I'm a little older now, but it's still that little voice getting ready to maybe transition. It's another conversation, but off of the pulpit, what am I going to do with this next chapter of my life? And I started a tech company, so I have that already kind of lined up. But it's still, I don't think the bug ever goes away. I don't think it ever goes away.
I think there
To
always
step
will
on,
be,
to step on the boards again, I'm sorry.
there always will be the pool of theater. Have you ever thought of creating your own group to do something?
That's always, I do get the opportunity to do concerts once a year. So I produce concerts, and I've had an opportunity to sing at other people's concerts. It's always through the synagogue world and through the Jewish world. So I do get to, dip my toe in it again. And I do get to create, but we're limited. It's not like you're producing a huge show and, with everything I've done bigger productions, some bigger ones, but you never know. Life, I flow with the light of the universe, and we'll see. And well, you never know. I'm kind of in a transition right now from what I'm doing at my synagogue to the next phase of my life, which is more involved with a technology company that I started, but it also, I'm going to be producing a concert for the Cantors Assembly International Convention coming up, and singing in it and engaging with others. So I think I'll keep both things balanced and moving at the same time. I just can't not do it. I just love both, so I'll figure it out.
One show you did I wanted to talk about is Falsettos, because it's yes, so little known, but such a wonderful Jewish story with an important message.
Well, it's Falsettos has that one Jewish character which I
Yeah.
played, which is the psychologist. That would have been a role. I mean, I would love to do that more and more and more at other places. But yes, of course, and it all has to do with love relationships. I mean, most of the shows that I've been in, I think you're really talking about just the purity of human interaction, and that what is that? What is, just loving somebody for no matter, what our sexual orientation is, I actually used that song that I did, the marriage proposal from that show that I had done years ago, to ask my wife, my current wife, to marry me. I was doing a concert, and as part of the concert, I asked my wife, would you come up and join me? I want to sing a song to you. And I proposed to her on the stage in front of 600 people, but yeah, I mean, Falsettos was a beautiful show. When we did it, it was the first time that it had been done in Rhode Island. And so there was a lot of press behind it because it was a little bit risque at the time. And it was, about two men wanting their relationship and a man leaving a marriage to be in love with a man and his child and the therapist through line of bringing everybody together. And ultimately, it was about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. There's a lot of uncomfortable moments in that narrative, and the therapist, kind of is helping everyone in the story become comfortable with this new, uncomfortable, new family dynamic, because it still remained a family, and the audience gets to see that and experience their own uncomfortableness, with these issues and address them. And that's again why I think theater is just so profound.
I think it's issues that need to be addressed again these days, because times are changing so rapidly.
Yeah, and yet they stay the same.
Yes.
We seem to repeat history without learning much sometimes, but I don't know if it's yeah, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of going on in the world, and I don't know how far you want to go into that, but certainly, at Rosh Hashanah, it's a good time to be thinking about reflecting on the year. It's a good time to be reflecting wherever we are in the world on the journey we've had, what's going on around us, how we've been responsive to that journey, how we've been responsive to the things around us, and then bringing it back to, which is the purity of our soul. And I think what God wants us to be doing, especially from a Jewish lens, is repairing the world ultimately, because we don't know what else is out there. We know that this is what we have. And I think that, being as open as we can to the other is a big thing.
Absolutely. And well, as long as you still see some positive everywhere, it's always there's always hope.
Always hope. Always hope. Hatikva, always hope.
Is there anything in this interview that you would to return to, or is there anything that hasn't been discussed that you would wish to discuss?
No, I think the only thing is, when I look back on like the arc of my own life, and I hope that especially as we're going into the high holidays, in Rosh Hashanah and the New Year, that everybody, we are looking back, at the year, life, but we're also looking forward in a way. And I think that it's important, like even in my arc, like I I went back to graduate school to become like, because I wanted to be authentic as a cantor. So I went back to graduate school and I spent 5 years studying and I got my smicha and I'm recognized as a chazan, you know. And so I think to me, it's like, and teaching, the one thing that's really been powerful for me is teaching how to engage with Torah from a chanting point of view. Obviously, I'm the cantor. So how do you chant Torah? How do you chant Megillot? How do you chant Haftorah? And there's these interesting systems that I've really gotten into about how the trope markings enhance and I think it comes from my theater background because I'm all about taking text and bringing it to life, right? And
Yes.
and so anytime you're singing, or you're taking a piece of text and you want it to be as engaging as possible. So I really got into the minutia of trope and how a trope symbol not only tells you where an accent mark is, how to sing it, but which symbols used to actually help the narrative and bring the narrative forward more. And so that's inspired me to create web applications so that more people can come and learn trope and engage with it. And it's being used all over the world. So I'm excited about that next phase. But it dovetails directly with what I've been doing in my life, and everywhere it kind of flows from one chapter or one book sometimes to the next. And so we have like Trope Trainer is the name of the application. We have an iLane and we have B Mitzvah Manager. So this whole other version of my life that I never would have thought I would have been doing ever, but being open to the infinite possibilities of the universe as we're entering into the high holidays, being open to change, I think is really important. And I would love to make sure that, your listeners or the people that see this kind of open their hearts to change. And that's kind of been my journey. I've had this one career in the theater. It moved me into having a career in the Jewish, clergy world. And now I'm looking at now changing again and having a career as a businessman in the tech world, and it still is connected to everything I've done.
Absolutely wonderful. So many things can come from one passion. Such an amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a important thing for us to always remember, that change it's hard to. I mean, it's people can give it lip service and say, "Oh, embrace change." Embrace change. Embrace change. Without it, we don't make discoveries. And at this time of tshuva, we have to embrace change in ourselves in particularly.
Thank you so much for this interview and your inspiring words. It was so great to hear it, especially at this time of year.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for reaching out. This was really quite a shock to get your contact, and I didn't even know where you were. I thought you were somewhere in the United States. So this is even more exciting to me. Like you're 8 hours. Wait a minute, I didn't figure out. So, and I love your backdrop. I love all those posters you have and everything. You must have a very cool house. It looks cool, very artistic. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye bye.
Behind the Mirror of Music with Dannii Cohen.